Hello, everyone.
Hello.
Hello, welcome. Welcome to the panel discussion on sexual harassment at work and mental health.
Thank you.
Hello, thank you.
Thank you.
Great. So, we'll just give a minute for our participants to join, because I can see a lot of people joining. And we can start from here. So, hello, everyone. I would like to welcome you all for the panel discussion today. Before we move on to the main subject of today's session, I would like to introduce myself, your moderator for today. I am Niharika Arora. I am a subject matter expert and trainer in prevention of sexual harassment. I am also a part of COE, that is Center of Excellence for KelpHR. Now, KelpHR is basically a pioneering firm, founded in 2013, who work in the spaces of PoSH, D&I, diversity, equity, and inclusion, and EAP, that is Employee Assistance Program. We have a vision of building workplaces that are safe, happy, and inclusive. With that core vision, we've been very active in the field, not just in streamlining the best practices in HR, but also the overall organizational well-being. With that aspect in mind, we have also been having KelpHR PoSH Awards for 3 years now. We have recently launched the 2022 version, and the registrations are open. This is basically, a platform to recognize the hard work that organizations have been putting in the field of prevention of sexual harassment, of making the workplaces a safe and inclusive space for everybody to work in. We have been, doing this for 3 years now, and we've also recognized some of the esteemed organizations in India with the label of safest workplaces to work at. Now, that's all about KelpHR and PoSH Awards. I would also want to introduce our partners for today's session, ILA. Madhura, would you want to please take the stage?
Certainly. Thank you so much, Niharika. It has always been a great pleasure and honor for us at ILA to have been partnering with KelpHR for this series of webinars. So myself, Madhura, I represent Indian Lawyers Association. We are a young not-for-profit organization working with a vision to clean India's legal system. So it's a very massive mammoth movement that we have taken up as a mission and vision for us. But we really want to address a lot of injustice that keeps happening within and due to the legal system that we currently operate with. So there are a lot of challenges that our lawyers face, like for example, they cannot advertise, or there are a lot of pending cases in the country. So we really want to address all such issues and go to the bottom of all of them and bring a lot of grassroots changes to how things work. So we operate in a way of having different local chapters in several cities of India. We have about 75 chapters currently. So we will be very happy to invite all of you in your individual capacity. You could join this movement. We'll send a detailed email to you maybe by tomorrow morning, and we look forward to having you join us on this movement. Thank you, Niharika. Over to you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Madhura. It is the joint venture between ILA and KelpHR that we are here for. These sessions are aimed to simplify the legislations, the legal aspects for everybody to understand, because ultimately it's the people who the law is for. And that is exactly what we're here today. We're expanding our premise from law and going into the practical aspects of the PoSH Act. Before we start with the crux of our session, I would want to introduce the esteemed panelists for today. I would like to welcome Dr. Rajani, who holds a PhD in development psychology and has 20 plus years of experience in counseling and psychotherapy. We welcome you, Dr. Rajani.
Thank you very much, Niharika, for your kind words. Yes, today's topic for discussion being sexual harassment at work and mental health. Now, I would first like to define the meaning of mental health. And according to World Health Organization, mental health is described as a state of well-being in which the individual realizes his or her own abilities, can cope with the normal stresses, of life and can work productively and fruitfully to make a contribution to the community. Mental health is not just the absence of mental illness, right? Now,
Thank
adding on,
before we go on and take your views on that, I would like to expand what you just introduced. Mental health, what it essentially means, and welcome our second guest today, Jyoti Dadlani. We welcome you. She's a passionate corporate trainer and a psychologist with 17 plus years of experience. We are very honored to have her. She's been awarded with the Dada Saheb Phalke Award. We welcome you, Dr. We welcome you, Jyoti.
Thank you so much, Niharika. It's been pleasure to on board with KelpHR and Indian Lawyers Association. It's been a great work for them.
Thank you so much. Let's humanize it. I've been a trainer for a long time, but I've never been a moderator. So let's humanize. Let's acknowledge this first. I'm very nervous for today's session.
relax. Please
Thank you.
relax.
I'm so glad that I have two psychologists. with
We
me
have,
today.
we have, you have two psychologists on a board. Just relax.
Yes.
We are there for you.
Yes, we are there.
Thank you.
Yeah.
With that, let's move on and introduce our third panelist. Hello, we welcome you, Gauri. Gauri Das is the Vice President and the Head HR for India India Factoring and Finance Solutions Private Limited. She's a seasoned professional and she's been an external member, an IC member for a couple of years now. Hello, welcome, Gauri.
Yeah, thanks, Niharika, and congratulations to you that you could acknowledge it in front of so many people that you are nervous. It does happen. All of us have been there.
Yes.
So
That's
just
true.
chill. And the coincidence, you said let's humanize it, and here comes HR.
Yes. Yes. See, that's the thing. So that's basically, I don't think it's a coincidence. I don't get nervous easily. But today I've been so nervous, I've not been able to eat because I have to moderate a session, and especially I'm moderating in place of Smita, our CEO, Smita Kapoor, right? She is the best in business, I would say. And, she's so soft and she's so polite and she has a great command on every subject. So it makes it all the more easier for her to do this. But I'm so glad I have you all as panelists. This subject has been the subject of discussion in our previous session also. And we are here to expand on that. So we have basically conceptualized the role of mental health in various steps of IC inquiries. But I want this session to be something more. Mental health, like it has been described by Dr. Rajani for us, thank you so much for that, is so much more. It is not just the organization where the person is. We are not just employees, we are humans also.
True.
There's so many factors outside influencing our being, our behavior, and that is what I want for us to talk about, to touch upon. Let's start with the victims, victims of sexual harassment. Now, this law that is in place, the Sexual Harassment of Women at Workplace Act, is for the protection of women. We know that. Women have been, the scope of this has been expanded by the Transgender Act that came in 2019, which said that women includes transgender persons who identify as women. Now, we have expanded on that even more. We say that why not have gender neutral policies, and a lot of organizations do have gender neutral policies because as employees, as humans, as employers, we've recognized this fact that sexual harassment is not limited to only women. Yes, the victims may be majorly women because of the societal norms, the ways of life that has become. But yes, it's constantly changing. The idea of who's a victim of sexual harassment is changing. Now, I would want to, start our discussion on that subject. That what do victims experience when somebody is subjected to an act of sexual harassment? There's so many factors that come to your mind. As women, I know that I have also experienced some mild forms of sexual harassment in my experience in my professional career, where I didn't even know that this is what is sexual harassment, as an intern or a volunteer, when I was not aware of the law and the systems in place. So I would want to start with that. What is your view? The external pressures of being a woman. Will I be stopped from coming to work? How will people react that, oh, again somebody complaining again? Why do women even come to work if they are complaining? All of these are things that we've heard in our lives. So, Dr. Rajani, let's start with you. What is your view on the subject?
Yeah, so the sexual harassment at workplace has been occurring globally at the workplace, irrespective of gender, class, creed, religion, or even region, having a severe impact on the mental health of the victim. Right? The victim could also be the respondent many a times being falsely accused. Right? Now, the types of sexual harassment at the workplace commonly, I would say, could be unwelcome sexual advances, request for sexual favors, touch someone inappropriately, make sexual remarks, sexual bullying, or even share sexually offensive jokes. And of course, rape does happen sometimes in many places. Now, any of these could happen to any individuals, creating a toxic environment or resulting in adverse employment conditions like being fired or even reprimanded due to sexual harassment. Now, speaking about the impact, as you want me to speak about, of the victim, is they could go through confusion, doubt, shock, leading to even denial, right? The victim may feel fear, shame, guilt, betrayal, powerlessness, leading to depression, anxiety, and also sometimes going out of control because they are helpless and unable to cope with what has happened to them, and may even have suicidal tendencies and thoughts, right? Now, the victim may also be going through difficulty in being 100% functional in doing the day-to-day chores or activities. They may have trouble sleeping, getting up in the morning, eating, and also doing things which were simple and were considered fun before or prior to the harassment, right? The other symptoms that I've observed are headaches, forgetfulness, difficulties in concentrating on any task or chores. And in some cases, they may even complain of stomach problems,
Okay.
right?
That's an interesting fact to know, actually.
True.
So, like physical reactions to being
Aspects.
subjected to something which is subjective in nature, like
Yeah.
may not even physically happen, in person. It's
Mm.
something non-verbal, a sight or an experience.
Yeah.
That's an interesting fact to know. So I recently came across the statistics that, it is not basically of India. It was a report that I saw about US, that almost 40% people in US have been, diagnosed with anxiety or depression. So
True.
the government is actually looking for an anxiety depression test mandatory for every person who's going to come to work, so that we are aware about the mental health of a person. This is something that we all need to think about, right, Jyoti? Like, for example, a person may have some past traumas. As a victim, I would have some experience, in my family or with a friend or a partner that has created a trauma in my head. Now there is suppression of trauma. We are very bold people in lives. We move on from things that trouble us. But the incident of sexual harassment may also act as a trigger sometimes,
True.
and create that trauma to just like flood past the gates and like come back to us and impact
Very
us.
true.
So what's your view? How do you deal with the victims of sexual harassment?
So, Niharika, when almost, let's say 80% of childhood was tough, and nowadays people says you should not touch the child. But when we grow up, I don't know, Niharika, you might be very young, but when we grow up in a situation where teacher used to hit, teacher used to blast,
True.
similar with the parenting, and there was no ifs and buts. Okay, this supposed to be done, and then they practically, if the child is crying, or a crybaby, it's always like you are the crybaby, and if the child is introvert, I think it being labeled. I remember I being labeled as a ghar komdi, because I was extremely introvert and I'm so afraid to go out. So this childhood trauma carries forward because that time it was not acknowledged, and it's still a taboo in our households in India, especially, to go or asking for the mental health specialist. We are easily go to the astrologer, we easily go to the healers, but we don't want it to ask for the professional helps, which is qualified doctors. So that somewhere we carry on, and with the time has passed, the trauma has been hidden under the curtain, I would say. But the moment something, any incidents happen that trigger, someone is bothering me, and that could relate my childhood memory, that old uncle, that old harasser, that old friend, and then the correlation happened. And the outburst is so bad because that childhood trauma came again. It's like a revisiting that old movie, rather, I would say. And it become very, very scary because now you are scared of that person and the new one also. So you have two villains in your life. So what are you going to do?
Exactly, that's true. And that brings me to my next question. We cope with the incident of sexual harassment. Every individual copes with it differently. Some people internalize it. They change their way of being. For example, let's say that somebody commented on the way I dressed. It was the comment was sexual in nature. I did not like it, but to avoid that, I changed the way I dress. So basically, I've changed the way I've expressed myself. So I've changed a part of me because I want to avoid some situation. Now the situation is external, it's somebody else doing the wrong, but I've internalized it. I thought, let's do something within my control, so that I can avoid being subjected to that external act. Now that can also have perhaps like an effect later in my life, because I have denied myself so many things at so many stages. Because we have two psychologists and counselors with us, I would want your opinion on this. The coping mechanisms can be different. Some people even indulge in let's say substance abuse to cope with things. Some people correct their ways, or like are very focused, and they want to do all the positive things to suppress the negatives in their life. Now what are your views on that? Have you both had any experiences on that? uh, Dr. Rajni?
Yeah. So first of all, when you feel that as I mentioned earlier, the various sexual harassment that we could experience right from our childhood to growing up years and at the workplace, it is important to accept whatever we have experienced, right? That the moment you accept it and validate it, the healing begins. You are ready to heal yourself, and then what happens is you allow the emotions to come out. But then this is the life we need to lead. How much are you going to run away from, or how many people are you going to run away from, or how much are you going to change yourself to be accepted by the other people? Right? So you need to lead your life the way you want to, the way you are comfortable with. So it's much more than internalizing it. It is to bring into practice what and how and when you want to bring about those transition changes, or how you want to do it. Whether you really want to do it. It's sometimes you give feedbacks to people. Now it is up to the person to take the feedback and work on it, or just leave it and move on with their lives.
Correct. And it is this recognition that I need to do something, I need to move on, is what brings me to you, Gauri. When a person decides that I want to take an action, when a victim of sexual harassment decides that I want to take an action, the first department or institution that they recognize is that they resonate with this, the HR, right? Because HR is not just a singular one time aspect. Now I know that the complaints of sexual harassment need to be addressed by the IC, but in most of the cases, we've seen the victim reaching out to the HR of the organization, because that's the person, that's the place you go to when you are distressed. So I'm pretty sure that as an IC member, as HR head, you would have had experience in, receiving complaints. So you would have seen the first-hand impact on the victims. Do you want to share some experience there?
Yeah, I think in all this discussion, the most important aspect is how's victim feeling, what are the steps that they can take, and overall how can we rectify. Like we say, you have to restrain people from doing it, and you have to bring in awareness, and finally some redressal is also required. So what I have seen, you rightly mentioned, though the IC works very well, and there is a lot of awareness also in people, and companies like us, we have a gender neutral policy that we were talking about. But most of the times the first touch point becomes HR, and that's where whenever we are doing a IC training, we bring in HR team also, because they become first point of contact, and they need to guide the victim well. Now, when it happens at workplaces, the challenge is also about tomorrow I have to work or whatever happens. But until I have made the complaint and it has been decided that, and it's not always true that people would not be at work or whatever decisions are taken, because it can change from case to case, company to company, and IC to IC, the way things are lucid, right? We don't have a concrete book to follow, that complaint comes, then you do this, you do this. It does not work like a recipe. So you have to probably connect with your team members. That feeling of shame, that feeling of anger, helplessness at times, because there have been so many high profile cases in corporates where nothing has happened, nothing much has happened, I would say. So for a victim to come forward and share this, it is a big challenge. And on top of that, I have also heard from people that I'm sharing this with you, but I do not want any actions to be taken, because they do not want that name to go out. I have seen cases where people have been fired because of this. So it's not that corporate India is doing everything which is required for such cases, handling of such cases. And it's all society, like the kind of mindset we have at home, we carry it to workplaces. We are same person who is at home, and same person is coming to the office. So unless there is a lot of awareness being given, there will not be allies at workplaces, especially men, and at times even women. So there have been examples where I have seen first person to connect with is your best friend, even before HR. And the best friend advising you, leave it, it's not going to help you, it's not going to help anybody's cause. And after some time, it translates into a tragedy. So these are some of the experiences that I have seen. I have not seen people coming forward very openly without any thought. That is very, very rare. It does happen. But there is a lot of ifs and buts. What if no action is taken? What will happen to my job? Would they ask me to go? These are some of the questions that are asked. And depending on the level of accused, the challenges, the thought process would be even more deeper. So unless IC has earned the confidence of the team, and that would be indicated by the designation of members, the integrity of members, how they are perceived in the organization. If these things have been taken care of, then it is easier for victims to come forward. This has been my experience.
That is true. Thank you so much for sharing this. What you said reminded me of an instance, that I had during one of the inquiries, where the victim, brought forward the complaint to the HR, and the HR was doing some preliminary inquiry because it was more about a senior professional. It was a whistleblower case. Then it transitioned into a complaint of sexual harassment, because they got to know that instances of sexual harassment did happen. So, that time when the victim, the aggrieved, was contemplating whether to file a formal complaint or not, the victim took information from the IC, went back, discussed it with the partner, came forward with more questions, more apprehensions, got them answered, went back. So, we could see, like, it was easy for us to see that it is not the decision of the aggrieved, but of the partner. So, Jyoti, I would like your views here. You've been an internal committee member as well. You've been a psychologist as well. Now, what do you think, this aspect of external influence, the influence of the family or the partner in deciding whether I, as a victim, want to speak up, file a formal complaint? Like, have you had any experiences on how to, how this can be improved? Because we've seen in our experience that sometimes, most of the times, in fact, that the victims tend to hold back, not file a formal complaint because the family is apprehensive of what will it do to your name, your place in the organization. So
So
what do you
let
think?
me thank you, Niharika. It's very, very important question. So let me start with the very small Hindi quote, सबसे बड़ा लोग क्या कहेंगे लोग. Unfortunately, we care so much about people that we put others first and me behind. Being judged, okay, so often, even if you are not even workplace, if you're walking on a road and someone whistle and you come back and tell your mom, and then mom would have said in the response, no, you are not wearing a collect clothes. Start from here. And when it worked the workplace, the fear of that, I, instead of respondent, I being as victimized, or I being labeled as a troublemaker, let me put this. So then I might lose my job, might lose my promotions, I might being transferred to other project. So in that all fear, the poor aggregated women don't want to, even they want to, their ties are pulling them down. When Gauri said that very correctly, she said that when the colleague said, this is so very normal, why you wanted to complain? But it's normal to them, not to you.
Exactly.
So
That's
every person perceive it differently. It might be a harassment to you, not to others. So that does not mean it's not wrong. So
true.
the message I want to give is, stop judging. If something is bothering, go ahead and talk about it, speak about it. And that's what we are looking for.
Exactly. This reminds me of the conversation that we had in our preliminary meeting about how certain acts are normalized due to, I owe everything to Bollywood, the great Bollywood that we have. We've romanticized stalking, we have normalized rowdy behaviors as romantic behaviors. So, a lot of acts that amount to sexual harassment are actually normal. Like, I remember one of the cases where somebody had, like, this habit of standing very close to the aggrieved, and it made the aggrieved very uncomfortable. But when this was told to the respondent that this is something that they are complaining against, they were so confused. They were like befuddled. They were like, what is this? Like, I don't, how can she prove that? It's normal. I stand like this with everybody. They couldn't comprehend that something like this can also be complained of. So that brings us to the second aspect of today's discussion, the impact on the respondents. Right. Now, when I say a respondent, I mean a person who's been alleged with the act of sexual harassment, the perpetrator. Now, IC's, behavior with the respondent is one thing that I would want the panelists to touch upon. But I also want the softer aspect of this to be discussed. When somebody is told that sexual harassment has been alleged against you, there's a complaint against you, the impact of it is always, in my experience, is like confusion and then stress. It's very rare in cases where people were really intending to harass. There was a good intention, motive, execution, planning, that I want to do something wrong with this person, that we have not seen this. Otherwise, like, that initial setback is something that we all have seen in our experiences, right? So, Jyoti, we'll start with you. What has been your experience vis-a-vis respondents?
Okay, when it comes to respondent, first experience, whenever we, address them, we can see the extreme amount of anxiety, racing the pulse rate, rapid breathing, dry mouth, tight throat, trembling, shaking lips, voice. So you can all, if the person is not really stable mind, you can see all this symptoms as a physical symptoms out of it. Then they now there is a perception or unwantedly fact that PoSH policy is only for women, PoSH Act only cover for women. So then no one gonna help me. There is not even law that gonna take care of me. So now mera kya hoga? In spite of there is a diversity inclusion, provide the prevention of discrimination based on gender identity and sexual orientation policies, but they might not even aware on it. And now there is a recent suicidal case which has happened just because of the person attended one IC, the respondent rather, and the next day he's written 12 pages suicidal note. He is being harassed, he's being mentally tortured, and his reputation on the stake. Everything, and they asked him to forcefully admit the right. So then it become very responsible at the part of IC also and respondent also, that to create an environment where they feel the way we make the victim feel safe. My question is to everyone in the ICs or everyone who's handling those kind of cases: are you feeling your respondent feel safe? Are you feeling that respondent being hurt? We cannot even go only on the one way of a track, right? And we are ought to be unbiased with both the parties. So are we taking care of that? Are we saying to the respondent, don't worry, we are there for you? Are this word has been transferred? Or in the moment complaint come and we assume our mind, okay, the work is, get this admitted, he has done something wrong. At least bother to listen to them genuinely.
True. That is true. So, speaking procedurally, the law requires the IC to follow principles of natural justice. And the first aspect of principles of natural justice is to give everybody a free trial, a fair and free trial, which basically essentially means that I give everybody a chance to be heard. It's not just the complainant that the IC is supposed to listen to, it's also the respondent, the person who's been alleged. And personally, it has been, something that I always do, and as an organization, KelpHR promotes that IC should not act as somebody who's finding proof of a charge. We should be a fact-finding committee. A fact has been presented, get the other version. So when we speak to the respondent as a practice, we always make sure that the first things that we are talking about after telling the person that you've received a complaint against them, that we ask them, are you okay? Take your time, calm down. Know that we are here for you equally. This is something that I now want to invite Dr. Rajani to talk about as to what should be the way to talk to a person who's just been told that there is a complaint of sexual harassment against them. Because let us first recognize this fact that there's not always intention behind an act. There's sometimes negligence, unawareness, yes, sometimes you don't you because there have been instances that like things have been normalized, words that we speak in day-to-day life that are
Yes.
foul in nature, but then they've been normalized because we've modernized ourselves, westernized ourselves. So what is your take on this, Dr. Rajani? How to
So when you
handle
get a
this?
complaint, yeah, thank you. When you hear or get a complaint, generally, as we have been hearing from other panelists as well, that the victim does not bring up the complaint for the fear that the HR or the will support the organization only, right? And for that fear, they may not brought it up to your notice and you are handling the case. It's important that, am I audible?
Yes.
Yeah, thank you. So it is important that you do not belittle the incident. or minimize the incident, but confront the respondent as to what and hear out their version of the incident. Because for that person, it would have been normal. It wouldn't have meant, he or she may not have meant as harassment, but for the victim, it is a big thing. A. Secondly, it's important to make the person aware that if this is what has happened and the person feels victimized, what is it that you are going to bring about a change in yourself, whether the person has accepted his or her mistake of the harassment being made and apologize. This is the kind of confrontation I would want you to do.
Okay, but I understand that. I clearly agree that when IC comes to that stage, this
Yes.
is something that we can do, and respectfully as well.
And
There's unsaid rule that be polite with everybody, not just the complainant but the respondent as well.
respondent too. Yes.
Exactly.
But yeah, and you need to be aware that the person is also a human being with a lot of feelings, shock, and also, being pulled up
True.
by the organization, right? And there has been an inquiry that he's been asked to attend to. So keeping all these in mind, we need to address the person in such a way that he also is comfortable in talking about the incident.
That's true. That's true. I would want to be very technical here and say that when we say respondent, it is he/she/ because it can be anybody.
Anybody.
Right? It's
Yes.
it's like the lawyer in me speaking out. Yes,
True.
Jyoti, you want to say something?
Can I add one more thing?
Sure.
So he/they, and
Yes.
apart from that, even if you're not in your part of IC, you're not talking anything and you are empathizing, just have an open body language. That's it. Sometimes staring also kill the person, guys.
It does.
So please just have an open, simple body language.
Exactly. So that brings us to the next aspect vis-a-vis respondents. Sensitivity required in handling respondents. So, Gauri, you were in HR as well, and besides the role of an IC member, do you think that the IC should reach out to the employer for, let's say, the keeping tracks on the respondent vis-a-vis the wellness? Basically, we always, even the law made that distinction, which I do not like, that retaliation is something which is protecting the complainant and witnesses. It is only in company policy that we make the organizations extend this protection to the respondent. But sometimes, more often than not, respondents also feel targeted. Now, what about their mental wellness? uh, let's start with this point. Do you think counseling sessions for respondents should be a mandatory aspect, that when they are showing the physical signs that Jyoti just gave us, of the physical signs of being stressed or anxious about it? Do you think we should start with that at least a person is feeling safe and secure enough to talk to the IC?
Yeah, I think a very important aspect because it applies to both sides. But before I share my thoughts on this, I would like to share an instance that a friend shared with me. A large private bank and a very large HNI client. There's a woman, Adam, and she is taking care of this particular account. So HNI client, so she goes, meets with this person in the office, and this is towards the end of the month. Everybody is busy with activities. They have to do closing, achieve their targets and all. And suddenly a woman comes to office and she files a complaint with the IC that this particular HNI client has harassed her. And as we always, both Dr. Rajani and Jyoti said, we always jump to conclusion and we are always like, yes, kuch to hua hoga and galat hi hua hoga. And so they go to this HNI client's place, and though a very large client, but they have to take care of the responsibilities that they have towards employee, and it includes workplace, extended workplace also. So they go there, they speak to him, confront him with the full surety that something would have happened. And the HNI client is calmly listening. So no counseling required here. So he's listening and then he says, okay, I have cameras fitted in the wall clock, which is there. And let me show you the recording. And the recording is totally opposite from what the whole team had thought. She had to complete her target. She was asking for a particular FD. This client was not willing to do it. That led to this complaint. So when we are dealing with respondent, we need to be cognizant of even such situations. Anything might happen in today's world. There are laws to protect, but laws are misused. So we have to be very, very careful when it comes to how we are dealing with the respondent. And more so when it comes to a man who is respondent, mostly that is what happens. And after Me Too, I have seen changes in the behavior of my man colleagues, because the way they used to behave with me openly, talking to me nicely, it has changed. Now, every time when they are talking to a woman, even for appraisals, they want to sit in a place which has only glass doors. So a lot of things have changed, and men have also, they have been made aware, they have also been guided. But yes, the bias remains that we do not take care of mental state of respondent who may not have done anything. But we always consider that, okay, he is the one who has done something wrong, he is guilty, or mostly it is he. That's why I'm mentioning he here. So we have to be very, very careful. And I think the same support should be extended to both sides, unless proven the person is not guilty, is the formula that I would want to have. And tomorrow, if it turns out like this case, the example that I shared from a bank, then what face you would have, right? It's a moral responsibility for IC also to be fair. We just talked about natural justice. So we have to be cognizant of this fact, and I fully advocate that both sides should get similar support.
That's true. That's true. This presumed guilt with the word respondent is something that we have to constantly fight against. We have to make the respondent understand that this is not what we are assuming. You're not assuming guilt. You don't have to prove your innocence. You just have to present facts, what really happened. In that case, that very intelligent respondent gave you the facts of the case, right? Now, but unfortunately, most of the times we don't have proofs as to what we did. That's the unfortunate reality, right? And that is perhaps the most, like the major reason of the stress around the subject of this, the sexual harassment complaints, because the instances that happen, they're happening without witnesses, without cameras, without evidence, and you have to prove to a committee. I understand that committees made us employee members and some subject matter expert, but no matter how much you look up to them as, like as somebody who's working in the organization, to prove oneself to them is a completely different task. Now this brings us to the IC. I love the way our session is flowing today. So IC, we know that they are supposed to be the fact finders. We have been talking about how they should deal with the victim, how should they receive the complaints, the sensitivity around it, the tangents that they should be thinking about. We know we have been talking about respondents, how to be careful with them, respectful towards them. But what about the IC members? IC members are employees with a day job sitting and being judges. They're not trained legal professionals. They're people who are from all different, departments, and they're basically training themselves, putting in the effort and sitting for such intense inquiries. Now, when we say, IC members are in inquiry, a normal person thinks, yes, IC members sitting one inquiry. Sometimes we're in multiple inquiries together. Now, last month, this happened for the first time that together I was attending 3 active inquiries. So, to go from one inquiry to the other, like I used to feel anxious myself, and I call myself a subject matter expert very proudly. But then, sometimes I got confused and I got nervous because when I'm sitting for hearings, I'm feeling what the other person is saying to me. That's something which is human. Let's humanize IC also. We feel it, but we're not supposed to. We always say it. The principle should be show empathy, not sympathy. Don't step into the feet of whoever is sitting in front of you know, agreed that you are not supposed to do that, and you are not supposed to as IC members. So let's talk about the mental health of the IC members. Now, do you think first that it should be a criteria for selection? Do you think employers should have that discussion at least, if not an assessment, of the mental health of an IC member? What do you think, Gauri?
I think this discussion should happen for everyone, not only for IC. And for IC, it is critical, but we have not reached there as yet because those discussions are not welcome. People are scared about telling it because they will be discriminated, and employers have directly no rights to ask such questions from them, because there is a thin line between what can be personal and what can be professional that you can ask. And we are already discussing a lot of things about what should not be discussed with a prospective employee or employee. So I think for IC it becomes very important, but how would you portray it, or how would you bring this to discussion is something like it's very delicate discussion, and you need to be very, very careful bringing out this topic, because people have different perceptions. We all have been brought up with different thought processes. Our value systems are different, and what can be very open discussion for me can be a very closed door thing for somebody else. So such discussions, even for mental health, it applies. But I think the chairman of the IC can take the first step forward, because they are the senior most, as we know, the senior most woman in the system does it. But even before coming to IC, I think it has to start from senior leadership team. If they show such behavior that a discussion on mental health is normal, it is fine. One day if they show up and say that I have to go home early because I'm not keeping well, then you are normalizing not keeping well. If they come to office and they are taking a leave tomorrow because they have to go to kids some event, they are normalizing family time. So these things have to start from the senior most people in the organization and then percolated down. But specifically for IC, I think it is important because some okay, these roles are not created, so you are not hired for IC. All members will be part of organization and they will come to IC also. So again, it is tricky, because if somebody is coming voluntarily, do we really need to enter into this discussion is one way of looking at it. But I would think even if they are entering voluntarily, they may not be aware what lies ahead. It might be their first time, and they need to be guided about what is expected, it might take, what toll it might take on them when it happens, and if they are ready, then only they should be introduced in the system. So in my my thought process, it is a yes.
That's true. That's true. I agree with you. You know, in my experience, what I have seen is sometimes what happens is that IC members are also influenced by their past experiences. You know, a person may be volunteering themselves to be an IC member, and like recently, I had this you know, inquiry going on where I could see that the IC member was very aggressive towards reaching a conclusion, because they've already made up their mind that yes, it has happened, you know, these things do happen. So it was an instance where actually the respondent had undergone a severe trauma, was undergoing counseling, but was charged with an instance of sexual harassment. But you know, the IC member, in view of the circumstances, was like, you know, it happens, I've seen it, people just cloak, you know, their acts behind something, you know, this is an excuse. They do these things because they know that nobody will look at them like that. They can misuse this trauma for their own benefit now. So, you know, that is one point, that I may be volunteering myself for the role, but am I mature enough for the role? That is the question, you know. And uh, like Dr. Rajani, you must have had various professionals coming to you in this time and age where the work is already, you know, very intense, you know, the cutthroat targets, and we're all working without looking at the clock. So the pressures of professional life, you know, this idealism of work life balance, This is already something that is in our heads actively, that it is something that we need to strive for. Now, if a person is given an added responsibility of being an IC member, that stress would come out somewhere as a reaction. It may be in the IC inquiry towards the victim or respondent based on the past traumas, or it may be somewhere else, like in the professional aspect, like I may not be able to do the work, or I may snap at my boss or talk rudely to a client. What has been your experience in this area?
First of all, we're all human beings and not super beings. We need to bring about and practice work-life balance. If you feel that your plate is overflowing, please scream. Please raise it up with your boss or the senior managers that this is how much I can do. Only when you start doing it, will you be able to cope with whatever workload that is coming on to you, and also be able to do it with less stress. There is going to be stress, no doubt, because you're managing the workspace as well as your family and other responsibilities too. But make it a practice to bring about work-life balance, no matter what, right? The thing is, you need to delegate if it is not possible by you. That delegation we don't do. We want everything to do it by ourselves, because we gain some expertise, we gain some experience, we also get a name, we may get a promotion and increment, hike, and all that. For that sake, we end up taking on more than how much we can do.
This is an
Right?
excellent point,
Yeah.
delegacy. And I would want to hear Gauri's view on it. But before that, I want Jyoti to address this fact as well. What are your views, Jyoti?
So when we why only IC? I mean, of course, we are talking about IC, but when we talk about, we've spoken about a couple of leaves, and let's normalize it. So there is a concept which few companies applied, which is sad day leave. If you're feeling sad, it's okay. Don't come to work. It's absolutely okay. And let's normalize that. And very importantly, when you talk about selecting a IC on not on their position base, but their mental health basis. So morning I receive a client after so many years, the first time client says, you know what, I want you to be there to before we select the ICs, I'll give you a couple of actions and see as a point of psychologist they fit or not.
That's great.
And that is one extra efforts, there one extra miles they are willing to do. And that is for sustainability, isn't it? Otherwise, hiring a wrong IC and then implement the what if the wrong decisions happen and implementations can be really, really bad. So why can't organization take that one extra mile?
That's true. That's true. So that brings us to a very comprehensive conclusion, Gauri, and I want your opinion here, because you're in this field for a long time. What do you think about the employer's role? Like Dr. Rajani talked about delegation of work, and Jyoti has talked about the various ways employees are, employers are, increasing the analysis of, deploying people to an IC role. Now, what is your view? Like, are employers, not just for your organization, but in the industry general, are they now open to this idea that when people are actively involved in an IC hearing, probably we need to cut some slack, give them time to at least complete their other deadlines, because IC inquiries have to be completed within 90 days or there are repercussions, right? Now, have you seen it happening? Is there a change happening?
Yeah, I think it is a good indicator of organization culture. So there are various committees in organization, and if it is a business related committee, then a lot of time and importance is given to such committee. But it comes to IC, lot of times it's only about doing what is required for compliances. Filing up the report, and a lot of times all of you are experienced in this area, you would have seen things are done only to create that paper which can go for yearly reporting, or if there's an inspector visit, it can be managed. But good organizations are taking these very seriously because it is now integral part of everything that they do. Just like we say the holistic wellness piece. So this is an important part of it. There is a reputational aspect of it. There are so many things. You are talking about diversity at one side, and on other side, if you are not able to create that safe environment, would diversity stay? I'm talking about gender diversity here. So a lot of things, and also when people look at each other, because I think Jyoti said that we have people from multiple generations. When they are looking at these things, how is it going to be for the prospective employer? So it's all about business, I would say, because this has started impacting business, and changes happen in businesses only when there is a business case. So I would say today there is a very strong case for PoSH. There is a very strong case for IC to be taken care of so that your things are smoother. If you do not take care of them for one time, who's going to volunteer next time? So if you really want that change, or you really want things to happen, you have to take care of it. But there are mixed examples that I have seen in my experience. People are supported, at times they are not supported. They slog till late night, and they have to finish it along with their day's job. So both sides do exist, but I am seeing a positive trend towards support to IC, towards empowerment to IC. Earlier, it was like one person very senior, and then all juniors would be part of it. But now IC teams are extremely strong. And I think KelpHR has been doing a lot of good work. Once I judged it last year, I saw what sort of actions organizations are taking where KelpHR has supported, and IC had come out very, very strongly. So I would say I'm seeing this positive change, but yes, there is a lot more to go.
That's amazing. That's amazing. This is such a wonderful conclusion to our session today, from the fumbling start to a strong end. I feel like this is the essence, right? Acknowledge. Acknowledge that we want to talk about it. We want to humanize ourselves. We all have limitations, boundaries. Sometimes we need support. So speak about it. Speak that you need help. That's great. Thank you for your time, our wonderful panelists. Any questions that let's see the questions. Are there any particular things, though we are very short on time? So this was really wonderful, Gauri, Jyoti, Dr. Rajani. I am so grateful to have this platform where I got to talk about such an important aspect with all three of you. I'm really, really honored to be a part of this session today. Thank you.
You did a good job, Niharika. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Yeah, it's so good to see now you are commanding the stage.
Yes.
Now you're running the show.
Okay. Okay. So yes, we do have a query that what in a situation where the decision taken by a committee is later proved to be incorrect against the accused. So what do we have, committee assessment, or is there some provision or law to rework the decision? So this is very legal, but let me address this. The thing is that when a decision is proved to be wrong, that can only be proved on appeal, and the appeal is made to the court of law. So when that is done, basically the decision is reversed. The recommendations made are corrected against the accused, and the accused is probably reinstated or given some damages to be reprise them basically. So it is not as if, like, for example, if the respondent was terminated, not every respondent would be happy coming back to the organization. So in those cases, damages have been given in certain cases. But yes, this also brings forward like the mental agony of being right, not being the wrong person, not being the perpetrator and still being punished is something that we have definitely seen. Yes. How does an organization and the IC assist a wrongly penalized respondent back into the system? So yes, that requires a very active effort. What do you think, Gauri? There's a question about how does the organization assist a wrongly penalized respondent back into the system?
Yeah, that's a very difficult situation because there is a damage to reputation. And as we say, if a character is lost, then It's very difficult to gain it back. And I think that's where it's extremely important to take the right steps since beginning, as we discussed, so that we do not reach this situation. But nonetheless, if the situation has arrived, I think a lot of communication would be required. It would be a sensitive topic because if this has not happened, then the other side was at wrongdoing, right? So how to bring out these things, because you do not want to make one person champion and another person because there may be a difference in interpretation, right? Like we discussed in the beginning, that it can be difference of understanding without any intention, but those things do not matter once there is IC and there are discussions involved. So to bring it back to glory, I think a lot of effort would be required in terms of communication, setting this the facts right, and also not to be becoming too negative towards the I don't know what term can be used here, but the person who the victim, now not a victim
Yes,
anymore.
the respondent who was wrongly accused. Yes.
Yes. No, so the other
The
side.
victim,
So,
the aggrieved who comes.
yeah, the so-called aggrieved. Yeah.
Yes, the so-called aggrieved.
Yeah,
Yes.
who's not aggrieved in sense. So I think both sides will have to work, bringing in that communication piece here, and sharing it as an example also, but in a right manner. Because again, we do not want to celebrate one and totally disregard the other thing, because it can be anything. So I think this is how it would work. But generally, I have not seen this in my experience as yet. I have heard from my friends, but no personal experiences, because such cases are not very high in numbers. They are still numbered, right?
Exactly, that's true. So yes, there's a follow-up question on that. So yes, it's not a breach of confidentiality here, like we're talking about now, because confidentiality is relating to a complaint. When it is being appealed and it has been overturned, it becomes like a public aspect. Then you can do things because you need an active public, correction. So that's not a breach of confidentiality technically. I feel like this is a tricky case in itself.
Yes.
And needs a session for its own. I feel like we should take this up in the tricky cases session that we will be doing in a couple of months now. So that's great. Thank you so much, everyone. Thank you for the lovely audience that we've had. Thank you for the panelists. Have a lovely evening.
Thank you very
Thank you
much.
all.
Thank
Have a
you
good
all.
day. Bye.
Thank
Bye.
you.
Everybody, bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye bye.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you for the lovely feedback. Thank you.